Hopefully. There we go. Now you should be able to see the presentation. Yes. So thanks a lot. And I'm going to present here a talk called Restored Wetlands Increase the Abundance of Adult Pike in the Coastal Baltic Sea. So as we heard throughout this symposia, pike is a socioeconomical and ecological keystone species in the Baltic Sea. And during the last couple of decades, we've seen decreasing stocks along the Swedish east coast. And this has been attributed to recruitment failure of the pike. So plenty of the pike has an anadromous life cycle, and a popular measure here in Sweden to aid the pike with their reproduction has been to construct or restore wetlands. And this is to offer suitable spawning habitat with reeds, flooded meadows, that's fitting for the pike to spawn in. Another important part is for the wetland to provide a good environment for the juvenile. So the fry are provided with food, protection, and ensuring that the water remains long enough for the fry to develop and be able to cope with life in the Baltic Sea. So these wetlands for pike, which we call Pikefactories, we have 70 restored wetlands until 2019 in Sweden. And the follow-up studies that's been done around these wetlands are either focusing on returning of adult pike or catching juveniles migrating out from the wetlands.
Excuse me.
Sorry?
When you're moving back and forth for your microphone, the loud gets high and low. So try to have the microphone at the same spot the whole time.
Microphone. Does it sound better now?
Yeah, if you hold your head still there.
Okay, I switched microphone. So yeah, and the results from these follow-up studies is a bit ambiguous, but there are several cases of with positive results. And as an example, we have a wetland in Kronoback. That was one of the first ones to be reconstructed. And that went from 3,000 juveniles migrating out before restoration up to 300,000 the second year after the restoration was finished. But the big question is, do these restored wetlands increase the actual abundance of adult pike in the coastal habitats? So to investigate this, we started up a study that we call Pikefactory, and the aim is to compare the abundance of adult pike in the coastal area with and without the presence of a Pikefactory. So we did this during 3 years, 2017 to 2020, and we used 3 locations, one here, Levik, and then this one, Oknö, and one on the eastern side of Öland called Havfjärden. Each of these locations contain a Pikefactory zone and a reference zone, which I'm going to show you on the next slide. But they were sampled 3 times during both spring and fall each year. And the Pikefactory zone and the reference zone was sampled simultaneously. So we had 2 boat teams with 2 fishermen in each. And we applied something that we called standardized rod fishing. And with that, I mean that we were using the same rods, reels, selection of lures, and we were fishing at the same time for the equal amount of time in these paired zones. And the catch per rod hour from this standardized rod fishing was surprisingly consistent, regardless of fishermen, weather condition, and season. So looking at these paired zones, we created paired zones of the same size and similar depth profile. So here we have the Pikefactory zone in Leavik, and that's the paired reference zone. As you see, it's separated by capes here. And at the Ukne location, we have the Pikefactory zone and the reference zone here. And all the black dots indicate a captured pike. So to sum up this effort, we caught 918 pikes, spent 1,130 man-hours fishing, and we captured 564 in the Pikefactory zone and 354 in the reference zone. The range in length was 33 to 112 centimeters, and the weight was between 0.25 to 9.7 kilos. And we had 3 pike over 100 centimeters. And considering that we almost spent 1,000 hours fishing and caught almost 1,000 fishes, to catch 3 pike over 100 centimeters is really depressing. So when we plot this effort in catch per unit effort, rod hour here, and we have the locations here and split up the Pikefactory zones and the reference zones. And when we tested this in a mixed model, we saw that we had a significant positive effect from a Pikefactory zone in terms of abundance of pike in that area compared to the reference zones. And we could also see on this that we have a higher effect in Leavik and Ukne compared to Havfjärden. And this could be explained by Leavik and Ukne being old wetlands. They were restored 2008 and 2009, while the wetland in Havfjärden was restored 2016. But we had higher abundance of pike where we had a connected Pikefactory. Another interesting comparison is looking at the size structure between our zones. So we have the length on the y-axis, and then we separated on the sex. So we have male pike in the bottom and female pike on top. And as before, we split up by location and the 2 zones, Pikefactory and reference zone. So when tested, we saw that we have significantly smaller pike in the Pikefactory zone compared to the reference zone. And this we interpret as having a higher abundance of young individuals, reducing the overall length in that Pikefactory zone. And that we link to having reproduction successful in the wetland. So by adding pit-ag stations next to these wetlands, we could look at the proportion of captured fish that migrates to the wetland. So on the left here, we have the amount of detected pike in the wetland on Öland. And as you can see, it's over 60% of the pike tagged in the coastline detected in the wetland for spawning. In Öland, the coastline is quite different compared to the mainland here. It's a very open coastline with few places for spawning. So this is a very important spawning location for the pike on Öland. While looking on the mainland in Leavik and Okne, we see that we have quite a high detection from the Pikefactory zones and lower from the reference zones. So this is indicating that the reference zones on the mainland are using other areas for spawning. If we convert these percentages to numbers, we have 322 out of the 918 pikes. That's 36% using the wetlands for spawning. And here we haven't done any adjustment for mortality. And this is a very interesting result, because going back 15 years in a previous study, we saw that 20% of the pike in the coastline was using what had freshwater origin. And this indicates that maybe this fraction has increased after the start of reconstructing wetlands. But it's a very interesting result here. So now, when knowing the pike, which pike migrate up to the wetland for spawning, we can link that to dispersal by looking at detected individuals in the wetland and their capture location out in the coastline, and plotting that distance and calculating the closest swimming distance. So when doing this, we saw that the longest distance that we found was 9.3 kilometers. The average was a lot lower, 1.6 kilometers. But the longest one was 9.3. And this shows that pike are dispersing over a coastline almost up to 20 kilometers with the wetland in the center. So to conclude this, I'm going to use a simple illustration of a coastline here, as simple as it can be. So by having a wetland, we can conclude that we have a higher abundance of pike in that area compared to a zone without a wetland. We also see that we have another size structure with smaller and possibly younger pike in the zone outside of a wetland compared to a reference zone. And we also see that pike from a wetland has the potential to disperse at least 20 kilometers around the wetland. This is, of course, limited by the size of our fishing areas. No pike were caught outside of the fishing area, so the possibility for them to use the wetland wasn't there, but up to 20 kilometers of dispersal we could see. So with that, I'd like to thank you and hopefully answer some of your questions if there are any.